When faced with the ultimate choice between sacrificing herself or watching her servers plunge the world into chaos, what will Lyra decide? And as Arika's betrayal becomes clear, can Lyra find hope for survival amidst the ticking countdown to explosion? Don't go away. Subscribe to our channel to unravel the mysterious adventure of Lyra and the werewolf brothers. 95. Lyra now, either give me the keys, or we're gonna see some fireworks in the snow, Arika smiled. I was too stunned to speak for a second as I stared at my servers between the explosives. The countdown had already begun on the screen. Only 4 minutes and 55 seconds remained, but the numbers seemed to flicker faster the more I stared at the screen. You bitch. I screamed and my voice echoed through the container. Arika laughed, petting a box of explosives like it was a puppy. I see you like this gift very much, but I need to see those keys, Lyra. Or this is all going to blow up. Stop the timer, Arika. I roared, but she clicked a button on her small remote, and instantly the timer lost 1 minute. Instead of 4 minutes and 27 seconds, the timer showed 3 minutes and 26 seconds. I roared and lunged at her without another thought. I needed to get that remote from her soon. Being a werewolf hugely advantaged me in this situation because I could use my speed against her. In a split second I pinned her under me, but she tossed the remote away. I heard it skid away somewhere, but before I could go after it, she delivered a strong punch to my jaw, making me taste blood. I was about to go after the remote but decided to deal with her first. Oh, you want to throw punches? I have a great surprise for you. I growled and drove the first of my cybernetic arm at her nose. Arika screamed at the top of her lungs while blood splattered everywhere. I heard the cracking of bone and knew instantly that I had broken her nose. What the fuck, she cried. But I rained a couple more punches at her jaw until she was bleeding from the mouth. She shouted at the top of her lungs and finally managed to catch my cybernetic arm. I pulled my arm back, but the glove came off, revealing the steel. Her eyes widened as I aimed another punch at her. But before my fist could meet with her face, I felt a stabbing pain shoot through my abdomen and tingle every nerve in my body until I fell to the side, completely numb and unable to move. Fuck, they were right about silver. It does fuck with mutts. Arika spat her bloody spit in my face as she got up and started kicking my side, intensifying the pain in my body. She had stuck a silver knife right into my stomach, but the wound wasn't deep because of all the layers of clothing. However, I could still feel the silver burning my stomach, tormenting me. Somehow I managed to pull the knife out of me and toss it aside. Arika had stopped kicking me for the moment. Instead, she searched the floor of the container for the remote. I took those few moments to recover. The tingling was still intense in all my nerves, making it hard for me to move my limbs, but I somehow sat up and reached inside my coat for the gun. I pulled it out and pointed it to her on time as Arika rose with the remote. Behind her on the giant screen, the countdown continued. Only 1 minute and 55 seconds were left. Wow, Arika said as soon as she faced me with the gun. That's a cute gun, but I bet it's not as cute as mine with the silver bullets. Arika laughed and pulled a gun out of her pocket and fired at me in the blink of an eye. I barely got a moment to dodge the silver bullet. I fired at her head, but she easily dodged it and continued firing silver bullets at me. I had nowhere to hide, and I was still finding it hard to get up because of the effect of the silver knife. A silver bullet would take me out almost instantly. I had my cybernetic arm in front of my face to protect my head, and was twisted on the floor like a pretzel to cover the vulnerable parts of my body. I heard a bullet hit my cybernetic arm and deflect away. I continued using it as my only shield while trying to drag my body out of the container. Ah! I screamed when Arika shot me in the leg after failing to shoot me in the head. The burn of the silver instantly made my whole body twitch like an animal dying a pathetic death. This got Arika to stop and laugh. Now that's a sight to behold. I always wanted to see exactly how badly the silver bullets affect before she could finish. I grabbed my gun and shot at her. At that moment I was seeing red. It didn't matter that I had been stabbed with a silver knife in the abdomen and shot in the leg with a silver bullet that was slowly poisoning my leg. If it wasn't taken out of my leg soon, I might lose it as well, but I couldn't care less about it at that moment. All I wanted was to wipe that condescending smile off her face and see her in pain. I didn't want to give her instant death. No, I wanted to see her suffer. I wanted to see her writhe in pain, begging for mercy. Adrenaline was pumping through my veins at that moment, numbing the pain in my leg and the abdomen and making me focus intensely on my target. I managed to hit her shoulder, sending the gun flying out of her hand. I shot at her legs without missing a beat and was lucky enough to hit one, making her collapse to the ground with a cry. Even though my leg was bleeding uncontrollably, and I couldn't feel anything but pain below my abdomen, I managed to drag myself to her. Arika was still groaning in pain, clutching the wound on her shoulder. The remote lay beside her. I snatched it before she could take it. However, I couldn't figure out which button to push. It made me panic, and I glanced at the screen to find only 1 second was left. 96. Caspian. We should go, I told my brother after scouting the nearby area. I didn't find anything interesting, but heaps of snow-covered junk and the ruins of the abandoned port. When I returned from my scout, I found Marius trying to communicate with the reinforcement and maintain the communication channel in case things went wrong. I had a feeling that things were going to go wrong one way or the other. It was my wolf's intuition who was pacing inside me restlessly, desperate to see Lyra. I could sense the same restlessness in Marius, but he was highly skilled in hiding his feelings. Did you find anything? He asked, and I shook my head. He grunted. I'm only getting static, and the weather's getting worse. We can't waste any more time. I agreed with him, and without wasting another second, we started following Lyra's footprints on the snow, threading through the containers and other ruins until we reached a vast opening surrounded by frozen crane arms. I eyed one of the crane arms that was bent at an odd angle. The sight made my wolf more anxious. The wind couldn't bend a crane arm like that. It was the work of something much more powerful a being. I shuddered and looked back at Marius, who was looking around as well. Lyra's footprints stopped at a point for a second before continuing ahead. A few feet ahead, another pair of footprints emerged. That pair of footprints took a U-turn while Lyra followed them. Marius stopped for a second, kneeling beside the footprints to study the second pair while I stayed alert, my eyes darting from one place to another in search of danger. I couldn't help but keep eyeing that oddly bent arm of the crane. Who is it? I asked Marius. Another female, Marius replied after a few seconds, straightening up. She's taller and heavier than Lyra. Both of us looked in the direction the footprints were headed, the maze of abandoned shipping containers. We exchanged a look before heading there with our guns out. Marius took the lead while I covered our back, fully alert. In a closed area like this, it was easy to get ambushed. Marius and I kept moving forward with a slow yet cautious speed until we heard a scream. It was loud and clear, cutting through the wheezing noise of the wind that hissed between the containers. The two of us broke off into a run as the scream echoed. My heart was ramming in my chest painfully. Even though the cold made it hard to breathe and run, Marius and I pumped our legs, following the two pairs of footprints through the snow as they twisted and turned in the maze of containers. Both of us wanted to get to Lyra as soon as possible. As we ran in the direction of the previous scream, we heard another scream followed by gunshots. Marius growled and shifted in his wolf to get faster to her. I stopped and got his gun, the compass and the communication device before running after him. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest as I ran. I was anxious to see Lyra. I was hoping those gunshots we heard weren't fired on Lyra. I wanted to see her alive and unhurt. Fuck, I wish I'd gone with her. But she had been very adamant from the start about meeting her sister alone. It was a miracle she had somehow managed to talk us into it. Fuck this. I wasn't going to let her put herself in danger again. I'd hate myself if she somehow got hurt today. Hopefully Marius would be able to get to her first, but this didn't ease my anxiety. I needed to see Lyra unhurt with my own eyes. While running through the maze of containers, I felt increasingly frustrated, anxious and restless. I heard the growls of Marius's wolf, followed by more gunshots. After the last gunshot, everything fell eerily silent. I growled and ran faster through the snow, and when I finally reached the place of action, the first thing I noticed was blood-stained snow. Then I saw Marius's wolf lying at a distance. My eyes widened as I stared at him. He didn't move a bit, making my heart stop beating. I looked around for Lyra only to find a trail of blood leading away from the container and towards the port. The wind was picking up, and the snow was falling harder, making it almost impossible for me to see much. But I managed to spot a figure somewhere far ahead. I wanted to follow after it, but at the same time my brother lay in front of me lifeless. Lyra was nowhere to be seen, and I couldn't pick up her scent in the air because of the wind. I was torn about whether to follow the blood trail or check my brother. The decision should have been simple, yet my mind was bogged down too much. I went for my brother first. As soon as I rounded the container, I saw more blood staining the container's floor. But that wasn't what shocked me. No. I saw the huge servers surrounded by explosives, and there was a massive screen above it, and it was having a countdown in red numbers. Only 15 seconds were left on the timer. I panicked and reached for my brother's wolf. As soon as I lifted him, I saw a deep wound bleeding from the midpoint of his eyes. It made my blood run cold. Marius, I called out for him, but there was no response. His wolf's eyes were lifeless. Even though the timer was about to reach 0, I searched for his pulses but got nothing. I roared at the top of my lungs, feeling like my life had ended. I picked up his wolf and dragged him as far away from the container as possible. Only 5 seconds were left, but I refused to give up. I wasn't going to die until I found Lyra and the bitch that killed my brother. I phased into my wolf and kept dragging his dead body further and further from the container as quickly as possible, hoping that she was holding it up. I'm coming for you, Lyra. But first. 97. Marius. As soon as I heard the scream and the gunshots, I phased into my wolf and ran. Staying in my human form and pushing through the snow was inefficient. My only goal was to get to Lyra as soon as possible. I needed to see her, otherwise I was going to lose my mind. Caspian didn't follow me immediately. He stayed in his human form and didn't phase to cover me, and also communicate with the reinforcement in case things headed in the wrong direction. Even though the snow was thick, I ran as fast as possible. The closer I got to the noise, the more screams and gunshots I heard. Every time I heard a gunshot, I felt like I had been shot. I'd feel a stab in my heart, making me hurry more. I was praying for Lyra to remain unhurt. I couldn't see her hurt again. She'd already spent so much time in the hospital, broken and weak. Caspian and I had almost lost her once. We wouldn't be able to stay sane if we had to experience the same again. I ran faster, and when I finally reached the end of the maze, I heard the noises coming from a container nearby. When I circled it and reached its opening, I saw Lyra somehow standing upright, bloodied. Meanwhile, another female crouched on the ground nearby, severely bleeding and in pain. It took me a second to notice that beyond them, inside the container, were the servers and explosives surrounded them. A giant screen above had a timer that had almost come to 0. I let out a growl, ready to leap and take Lyra away from there as soon as possible. Oh, we have a guest. The other female spoke through pain. Lyra turned around to see me, and her eyes widened. That was when I noticed that she was bleeding from her stomach and her leg. Her leg looked deeply injured, and this immediately made me want to tear the other female into shreds. That's one of the mutts you're fucking, isn't it? The female asked in disdain. Ugh, look at that ugly thing. I told you to come here alone, but I'm not surprised. Now take this. With that, she shot at Lyra. I growled and lunged towards her. Marius! Lyra yelled behind me. I saw the female point a gun and fire at me, but I dodged them. I was about to reach her and pin her down, but she shot me right in the head. Marius! I heard Lyra scream behind me as the force of the bullet jerked me back, and I landed on my side at an odd angle before hearing a bone snap. You bitch! I will kill you! I heard Lyra screaming and firing at her sister, but the latter laughed like a maniac. I fought the pain that jabbed through my head, forcing my eyes shut. I pushed. I didn't want to go yet. I tried to growl, but I couldn't find the energy suddenly. It felt like my life was draining out of me. I smelled blood and felt something wet trickling down my snout. It was my blood. My hearing was numbing and my vision grew blurry. I saw Arika stumbling out of the container with her injured leg, holding something over her head. My eyelids grew extremely heavy. I couldn't keep them open anymore, and they finally fluttered shut. The pain in my head was too much to be bearable. It was a silver bullet, and that made me sad. Not because it was going to kill me. I was sad because I couldn't see Lyra for the last time before my eyes closed. Before going, I wanted to feel her touch and hear her voice for the last time. I would regret not marking her, but whatever time I had spent with her was beautiful. Whenever I'd go next, I would never forget those memories in case I got to keep them. I'd fight to keep those memories of her with me no matter what. As if answering my last wish, I felt 2 arms circling my neck in an embrace. One of those arms was made of metal. Lyra. I wanted to call out for her, but I couldn't move. The bullet must have hit somewhere important. It felt like I was paralyzed by pain. But I could still hear, feel, and smell everything. I heard Lyra's soft sobs above my head. She placed her head on mine, sobbing. I smelled her blood mingled with her tears. I wanted to tell her how much she meant to me, that I was still with her, and that I wasn't going to leave her. I just knew it. I was going to fight for her till the end. This wasn't my end. Yet. I'm sorry, Marius, she sobbed. I've been so terrible with you, and you're all being punished because of me. I don't deserve you. Her words hurt me. I wanted to tell her that she was speaking nonsense. I wanted to tell her she was the best thing that happened to me, even with how she used to push away me earlier. But that had made our union so much more worth it. I wanted to tell her that I loved her, that she had filled me and my brothers' lives with so much happiness. She'd given us a new life and I couldn't be a part of it anymore. It saddened me deeply. I wish I could talk to her for the last time. I love you, Marius. I will always love you, she whispered, kissing my head. I'll fuck that bitch up for doing this to you. I'll skin her alive. She started sobbing again as she held my head close to her chest for the last time before gently laying my head down. Even though my head was splitting with pain, some consciousness still lingered in me. I heard her drag her injured leg through the snow. Meanwhile, I waited. I waited for death to come, but it didn't. Instead, I heard the sound of snow crunching, followed by my brother's voice. Marius. He shouted my name, his voice laced with dread and sorrow. I wanted to tell him that I was still with him. I wanted to talk to him for the last time too. But I couldn't even move my eyes. I felt him searching for my pulse, but when he found none, he screamed and started dragging me away. That's when I finally slipped into darkness. 98. Lyra. I stared at the screen wide-eyed. It was flashing 0 seconds. I could hear my heart throbbing in my chest as I waited for the bombs to detonate and take the two of us out, but nothing happened. Instead, Arika threw her head back and laughed mockingly. That look on your face is priceless, she smiled, fighting the pain from the gunshot wounds I had given her. I turned to her, surprised. What did this mean? So it's all set up. I wondered out loud, ready to take her down. If this was all a setup, then I could save my servers after I put a bullet or two in her skull. Oh no, she laughed. That was to scare you. Do you think I'm that suicidal? You're a crazy bitch, I sneered, but I have the remote now, that's a plaything. The real deal is here. She chuckled in pain and pulled out another remote form under her bloodied clothes. Though when I press a button on this one, there'd be no countdown. Straight fireworks. Now that you know what's up, give me the keys, Lyra. I'm done playing, she demanded, a hint of impatience and pain in her voice. She was crouching low, seemingly unable to get up. My wounds were burning from the silver as well. I raised my gun at her, but she raised the remote, her finger hovering on the final button. I hesitated. I licked my lips and looked at my servers. It was either my death or whatever dangerous information I had collected since all those years fell into the wrong hands. It was either my death or the revocation of an ancient treaty between the wolves and the drakons that would lead to a devastating war. The option was clear in front of me. I swallowed hard and stared at the remote in her hand, the finger hovering over the button that now controlled so many things in this world. So you're committing suicide? I asked. Not that I doubted it. I was buying some time for myself to accept that I'd never see either of my mates again. A terrible pain stabbed my chest. It was far worse than the pain that the silver knife and the bullet had inflicted on me. I'd die without seeing my mates for the last time. I remembered our last time together, the way Caspian had caressed my back assuringly throughout our whole hike, and the way Marius kissed me so fiercely. I wish I could taste the two for the last time. I wish I could be with them for the last time. I wish we had marked and completed the mating bond. No. That'd have worsened this for them. Even though my wolf was saddened by the fact that she'd never get to wear the mark of either of her mates or get to mark them back, I accepted it. It was for the best. I knew it was the moon goddess's doing. She was still pissed at me for troubling my mates. She'd given me everything I'd asked for, only for me to disrespect her by rejecting her and trying to run away from them. I probably deserved this, but my mates didn't. I deserved everything that happened to me, and that was going to happen to me. But it'd hurt them more. It made me feel like the biggest piece of crap. I really was the most terrible bitch out there for being so fucking selfish. Marius and Caspian deserved a lot better than me. Anything to see you dead, Arika laughed in my face. There was a bitterness in her laughter that sparked a last-minute hope inside me. It felt like that sudden surge of power and awareness a few moments before death. This was it. It makes me feel less insignificant to know that someone from my family is willing to die for me. I smiled at her, a genuine smile, unlike hers, which contained so much bitterness. The smile faded from her lips, and momentarily, I saw an emotion flicker in her eyes. "Wait, that's not what I meant," she shot, sounding offended. But I could see that my words had touched her somewhere deep, somewhere we never dared to venture. Even though we were different, we were cut from the same cloth. I could tell what the words did to her. "Doesn't matter," I smiled. Arika stared at me for a hard second, her eyes growing rheumy even though she forced a determined look on her face. Her mask slipped slightly, and I caught a peek at her wounds. They matched mine. I nodded to her, hoping she'd know I understood why she was doing this. She was doing this because she had nothing to lose. She'd never had anything worth losing. Just like me until the brothers found me. She didn't have anything like that. She didn't have anyone to see tomorrow with. "Oh, we have a guest," Arika shot abruptly, and I turned to find a giant black wolf glaring murderously at Arika. "Marius." My wolf held happily inside me, too glad to see one of her mates. For a brief second, Marius's wolf glanced at me, visually examining me for wounds. His eyes lingered on all the blood all over me, and he growled at Arika. "That's one of the mutts you're fucking, isn't it? Ugh, look at that ugly thing. I told you to come here alone, but I'm not surprised. Now take this." Arika shot at me, and I ducked, shielding myself with the cybernetic arm. Whatever flicker of compassion I was feeling towards her was instantly gone. Marius growled and lunged at her. "Marius!" I screamed, watching his wolf racing towards Arika while she fired at him. I watched with wide eyes as she shot him point-blank in the head. I forgot how to breathe for a second as I watched his wolf jerk back and fall aside. "Marius!" I cried out loud, seeing his wolf on the floor, unmoving. "You bitch! I will kill you!" I screamed at her, dragging myself to Marius somehow. The pain in my leg was unbearable, but it had all been forgotten. I lied. Haha. This time the countdown's real. I'm getting out of here. Fuck you and your mate and those fucking servers. I heard Arika laughing as she ran out, dragging her injured leg. I wanted to go after her, but the pool of blood that was steadily growing around Marius didn't permit me to move. I collapsed beside him, circling my arms around his wolf's neck and pulling it over my lap. Tears ran down my face as I stared at the gaping, bleeding wound on his wolf's forehead, a silver bullet to the head. It was the ultimate death.
"I'm sorry, Marius, is so bad."
I didn't want to. I wanted to take the bullet out, maybe, or try to revive him or do something to save him, but I couldn't move. I was completely numb. I didn't want to leave his side. I searched his wolf's eyes, which were dark slits without any life in them. That made me sob harder. This happened all because of me. I've been so terrible with you, and you're all being punished because of me. I don't deserve you, I sobbed uncontrollably. I love you, Marius. I will always love you. I kissed his head, feeling the world slipping away. It was only me and him. I wanted him for the last time. No, I wanted him with me forever. But that didn't happen because I made some foolish decisions in the past, decisions that brought him here because of me. Arika's laughter echoed in my ears, and slowly, the numbing and the grief were being taken over by a burning rage. I was going to destroy her. Take my sweet time to torture her before giving her death. I'll fuck that bitch up for doing this to you. I'll skin her alive. I sobbed harder, unable to find any words to let out the anger inside me. No matter what, my Marius wouldn't return to me anymore. But I wasn't going to let that bitch get away with this. I kissed his head last time and held him against my chest before laying it down gently on the floor. My heart broke seeing him lifeless. I wanted to stay, but I couldn't. I needed to catch that bitch before she could get too far. She was injured, but this was the best time. I took a last glance at my dead mate and followed the trail of blood in the snow. I spotted her dragging her injured leg a few feet ahead of me. I'll make you regret this till your next life, I gritted, following her to avenge my Marius. 99. Lyra. Even though I couldn't feel anything on my wounded leg down the knee, I kept dragging it mercilessly. My eyes were set murderously on Arika ahead. She was having far worse problems with her wounds because of her lack of werewolf healing capabilities. This gave me an advantage over her. She was also losing more blood than me, which meant that she'd grow weaker quicker. This was the best opportunity for me to strike her, to take it all out on her. Even though I was burning with anger, I couldn't stop sobbing. The image of Marius's dead wolf kept flashing in front of my eyes again and again, paining me. I was feeling that intense pain in my chest. I wondered if it was because of his death. My Marius. I cried, but my anger was more intense. I was going to make Arika's life a nightmare. I was going to do the worst of things to her. The strong winds and snow tried to slow me down, but I pushed through, never taking my eyes off Arika, struggling to walk ahead of me. When I was close enough to her, I took out my gun and fired at her other leg. She screamed and collapsed on the snow, sprouting more blood from the gunshot. However, she still crawled while I dragged herself through the thick snow. I had to give it to her. She had a strong spirit. Even though she knew she would be caught no matter how hard she tried, she still tried to get as far away from me as possible. This would make the process of torturing her more fun. I was almost looking forward to it. I'd take my time to break that spirit of hers slowly. I wanted to see the same dead look in her eyes that I saw in Marius's. I let out a loud growl, used whatever last energy was left in my body, and lunged at her. She screamed and tried to thrash me, but I pinned her down by the neck, using my good leg to crush her freshly wounded one, making her cry out in pain even more. "Where the fuck do you think you're going after killing my mate?" I growled. My voice was much deeper, and I realized it was my wolf speaking. Not that she had taken over me. No, she had merged with me to fuel me with more energy since my silver-infected wounds, along with the bleeding, made my body weaker. My wolf was doing everything to keep me alive in the harsh climate. At the same time, she was furious at Arika and wanted to drink her blood. That was the only thing that would bring her peace at this point, and I was looking forward to it. "I've got you. What will you do now?" I hissed, fisting her hair and pulling her head back with a jerk that surely hurt her a lot. She squirmed and struggled, but I could feel that there was no energy left in her. The sudden drop in temperature made it even more exhausting for her to fight me. However, she continued struggling. I felt something sharp and hot against my side and saw the silver knife in her hand. This angered me further. I clutched the knife by the blade, not caring if it hurt me, and snatched it out of her hand. My anger suppressed all sensations in my body. The only thing I could feel was the thirst for her blood. I turned her around and punched her broken nose repeatedly until her face was even bloodier, and one of her eyes was purple and swollen. This finally seemed to have exhausted her enough that she couldn't fight me anymore. "Don't worry. I'm not going to kill you so easily. I'll skin you alive." "Oh yes, I will," I laughed manically even though I had frozen tears on my cheek. I was feeling on the edge of insanity. "You killed him." I yelled at her in the next second while she lay under me, breathing hard and unable to move anymore. But she was conscious, I knew it. I found the silver knife and held it against her lips. "I'm going to start here," I told her, and she made a noise of panic. This made me smile wider. I saw a hint of panic in her good eye, which was a mere slit and slowly starting to swell as well. "I'll allow you to scream and beg for mercy, but you're going to get none," I said, playfully pressing the tip of my knife against her lower lip. She made a last effort to fight me by throwing a punch at my face, but it did nothing to me. I growled and tugged her lower lip out before starting to cut it. She screamed under me, but I didn't stop until it was gone entirely. "Ha ha ha. Look at that. It's time for your upper lip now. Next I'll do the tongue and then the ears and then the eyes," I told her while she continued to scream in pain. The howling wind drowned her screams. Seeing her blood against the snow filled me with satisfaction. I scooped the snow stained with her blood and licked it, tasting her blood. Yes, that's what I wanted. That's what my wolf wanted. Meanwhile, Arika watched me with pure horror. I laughed like a maniac again before grabbing the knife and going for her upper lip when a blinding light hit me out of nowhere, disarming me for a second. I blinked hard, trying to gain my vision, but I couldn't see anything. My eyes burned suddenly, and I wondered if this was Arika's doing. I aimed a punch under me, but my fist hit nothing. When I opened my eyes, Arika was gone from underneath me, and so was the snow. However, everything surrounding me was white, the floor as long as it went and the sky above me. I was deeply baffled as I stood up and looked around me. It took me a moment to realize that my wounds were gone, along with the blood. I pulled back my pant leg, but there was nothing. I looked around again and wondered where this place was and what had happened to my wounds. Am I dead? I wondered out loud. No, you're not, answered a chilling voice behind me. I froze. Moon goddess, I whispered while she chuckled darkly behind me. 100, Lyra. Goosebumps erupted over my skin as I heard the moon goddess's eerie laughter. It sent a shiver down my spine and struck me with terror. I remembered the night in the woods when I summoned her and presented her with a long list of qualities I sought in a mate. Lyra, my child. I'm so glad to see you again, she said behind me. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. It always gave me the chills. It sounded too perfect, too otherworldly, too eerie. Where am I? I asked her. Is this the afterlife? Did I die? Yes, then I want to see Marius. Please. I started pleading without wasting a second. I was willing to do anything to get him back. At my words, the moon goddess only laughed. Her voice did not hint at mercy or compassion. It was as if my pleas were funny to her. This is a punishment, right? I know it is. You took my arm and now you took one of my mates, I cried. I didn't take enough, she remarked, and that gripped my heart. No, please, not Caspian too. What sort of punishment is this? I asked her, feeling a surfeit of emotions wash through me: anger, sorrow, resentment, regret, and self-loathing. When I granted you the wish, you promised me to accept whatever I had in store for you. I don't see you upholding that promise, she stated calmly. Her voice was smooth and silky, but there was a darkness to it that intensified my terror. I'm sorry for that. I'm foolish. Well then, you must honor that promise. If this is what I have in store for you, why not accept it? She asked casually. Please. Not my mates. You can take another arm, leg, or whatever you want, but not them. Please, I pleaded. Who are you to decide how I conduct my affairs? She asked, an edge in her voice. I swallowed hard and fell to my knees. She was still standing behind me, but an invisible force kept me from turning and looking at her. I'm not questioning your ways, but please. This once. Let them go. I know I made a huge mistake by not accepting them initially. I was blinded by pride and vengeance. I was foolish. I still am. I know that I must pay for not upholding my promise in some way, but please. Spare my mates. They don't deserve this. I've realized that I never deserved them, I told her. Silence followed my words. It felt like she had left me in this madness of complete white for a moment. But the feeling of her grounding presence behind me assured me that she was still here with me. When I blessed you with them, I never asked for a price, she spoke after a second. There's always a price for everything, or else people take it for granted. Just like you did. Her words made sense, but it was too late for me to realize this. Indeed, I had taken the two of them for granted. Everything they did so far was for me. What did I do for them in return? I tried to think of something I'd done for them, but I couldn't come up with anything. This made me loathe myself even more. All I did was take from the brothers. I'd been selfish and childish with them throughout our brief relationship. I'm willing to pay a price now, moon goddess, I told her adamantly, holding back my tears. Oh really? She asked. Yes, what will you give me? She asked pryingly. I licked my lips and tried to think of anything worthwhile that interested a goddess.
You was a mere mortal.
What did I have that a goddess could ever want? You name it, I told her after considering it. I might be selling my soul here, but I was willing to do so to save Marius and Caspian. Their lives were worth more than mine. I was the scum on earth that deserved to be washed away. The moon goddess laughed at me wickedly. Oh really? You'd give me anything? She asked. Anything? I shot, rising on my knees and clutching my hands in front of my chest. Anything? She asked again, a dark edge to her voice. I swallowed hard and hesitated, but I echoed, anything. All right then. I'd take both of your mates, she stated. No. I shot, please not them. You said anything, she reminded me. Her tone was playful while I was trembling, tears running down my cheek. Anything but my mates, I told her. I want something valuable to you, and I see that you now see how valuable they are. I heard the cruel smile in her voice. No please. Not my mates. I'm begging you, what else that you have that's invaluable? She asked. I thought about everything valuable to me but couldn't think of anything besides the brothers. They were everything to me. They were the most valuable to me, not my servers or all the money I had collected for all those years. Not that the goddess would be interested in such things. See, you don't have anything to offer to me except for the brothers. the moon goddess pointed out when I failed to give her an answer. She was right, and that shut me up. But, I'll give you my life, I told her quietly, and she laughed. Then what's the point of doing all this? She asked. If it's a lesson you want to teach me, then I've learnt it well, I assured her. But the price to be paid is still unsettled, she reminded me. And this pushed me further to the edge. I've decided then. I'll have your blood, she spoke. I'll give you that, I told her instantly. Not your blood, she spoke. I'll take that sister of yours. If you wish me to spare your mate's life, then you must spare hers. Her words confused me for a second, but I nodded. I spare her life, I said freely. That doesn't end here, she stated, and for a second this made me wonder if she was making me walk into a trap. Damn it. Damn everything. If she was walking me into a trap, then be it. I'd do anything for my mates. In the near future she'll reach out to you for an important favor. You mustn't turn her down. Then there was the catch, but I felt there was more to it. However, it didn't matter to me anymore. I was willing to do anything for my mates. Anything. Would that assure the safety of both my mates? I asked her. Yes, she answered. I'll keep my word this time, I promised her. 101. Marius. I was met with the blinding white of the snow as soon as I opened my eyes. I blinked several times to get used to the glaring white. It took me a minute or two until I could see again. And the first thing I noticed was a stormy gray sky and the snow falling from it. I lay under the cold, open sky for some reason. I tried to recall what I was doing by laying in the open and staring at the sky, but I couldn't think of any reason. I sat up and looked around me. The place didn't seem part of my pack territory, which was even more odd. Instantly, many questions sprouted in my head. Where was I? How did I get here? What was I doing here? Why was I laying on the snow? I searched my mind for answers but found none. I frowned to myself, rubbing my head, and instantly hissed in pain. It hurt terribly, but why? I didn't remember getting any injury in the head. I searched my head for any wounds, but there were none. Still, there was a sharp pain in my head that throbbed away. It wasn't something I couldn't handle. It seemed to get better gradually because my wolf was healing it quickly. However, it left me even more puzzled. I got up and looked around for any clue. All I saw was vast stretches of snow, but behind me huge shipping containers stood. I stared at them for a second, trying to remember what this place was and how I got here in the first place. A groan somewhere near me snapped me out of my thoughts. I followed the groans until I found Caspian splayed out on the snow. Caspian, I called out, crouching beside him to check his vitals. He opened his tired eyes and looked at me in confusion. What happened? He asked after blinking at me for a few seconds. I'm trying to figure out the same, I told him, holding his arm and tugging him to his feet. Do you know this place? Do you remember how we got here? I asked him while he looked as confused as me, if not more. What's the last thing you remember? He asked me. I tilted my head to the side, searching for the last memory. Having breakfast with you and Lyra, I answered. I could tell he was searching for the same memory. He nodded once he found the memory I addressed but supplied. My last memory of us in a car and driving through an abandoned harbor town. What else do you remember? I asked him, still probing into my brain, but I could not come up with anything. The pain I had been feeling previously still lingered, but it wasn't as debilitating. It felt more like an annoying itch I couldn't scratch. I remember an entourage of sorts. Caspian tried to figure out loud. No, they were reinforcements. I remember feeling an urgency. I was trying to assure Lyra of something while you were in the front driving. Again, I checked my memories but found nothing similar to what Caspian said. All I remembered was having breakfast with my brother and our mate, and if I pushed more, I remembered cuddling with Lyra last night. Apart from that, nothing else came to my mind. If you say we were reinforcement, then we were on a mission of sorts, I stated, and it involves significant danger. Where's Lyra? Caspian shot, looking around. The same urgency washed over me when I realized what Caspian's last memories meant. Without thinking much, I phased and let my wolf take over. He took control and sniffed the air for any hints of her scent, but there were none because of the blowing wind. However, it didn't deter us and we broke into a run. Behind me, I heard Caspian turning on the comms device we used in rough weather. I ran through the maze of the frozen shipping containers, looking for any signs of Lyra. With every passing second, my desperation to find her grew. I needed to find her soon. I felt this immense sense of danger. It felt like a sword was dangling over my neck. My wolf growled and pushed through, running around frantically, but Lyra was nowhere to be found. I came across Caspian, but he didn't seem to have any clue about her either. I phased back, feeling irritated and restless about finding our mate. "What did you get in the comms?" I asked him. "Nothing. The weather's too bad for it. All I got was static." "Wait, did you hear that?" Caspian cut off abruptly. We listened silently for any distinct noise apart from the wind's howling. "Sobs," I answered, and in the next moment, we were running towards the direction the sobs seemed to be coming from. It took us a few moments, but eventually we found the sob source. We exited the labyrinth of the abandoned containers and were met with a vast clearing. However, a last container was laying a few meters away from the maze. The sobs were coming from there. We rushed towards it without wasting a second. As soon as we rounded the container and came face to face with its opening, the sob turned into a gasp. The first thing I noticed was massive servers surrounded by crates of explosives, a huge black screen hanging above the mountain of servers and explosives. Déjà vu hit me as I stared at the scene before me. I had seen something like this before but couldn't remember anything correctly. It felt like I was reliving something. When I forced my brain too much, several images flashed before my eyes. A female that looked like Lyra covered in blood. Lyra was covered in blood. A pained look on her face. Blood covering snow. Someone raised a gun and fired at me. Lyra crying while she held me against her chest. A devastated look on Lyra's face as she looked at me. I staggered back as these unsettling images flashed through my head. I couldn't make any sense of them, but the last image of Lyra looking at me devastatingly pinched my heart. It all felt like a fever dream, but at the same time, there was an unexplainable familiarity to it. It was as if I had experienced it. "Lyra!" Caspian shouted, and my eyes darted around the container until I finally found our mate slumped on the floor, looking somewhat tired and defeated. However, as soon as her eyes fell on us, they lit up with life. She looked overly glad to see Caspian, but she started sobbing uncontrollably as soon as she saw me. "He's back," I thought I heard her sob as I went to her and scooped her in my arms. She threw her arms around me and hugged me tightly before kissing Caspian. I noticed that she was shaking uncontrollably. Caspian took off his coat and instantly draped it around her while she clung to me, burying her face in the crook of my neck. "It's okay. We're here, baby girl," I assured her while Caspian looked around the place. Lyra suddenly raised her face and looked at me with wide eyes as if she couldn't believe that she was seeing me. "Marius, is that you?" she asked weakly, puzzling me even more. "Of course it's me, baby girl. You're safe now," I told her, and she broke off into more tears, clinging to me as if she was afraid I'd leave her. "It's okay. I've got you, Lyra," I cooed to her, and she sobbed harder for some reason. 102. Caspian. I looked at the explosives and the big screens and couldn't help but feel strange about the whole thing. I was already confused about everything after waking up from what seemed like a fever dream. We suddenly found ourselves at this strange place. Nothing made sense. I tried to force myself to remember, desperately searching my head for a proper explanation, but I got none. However, something about the servers, the explosives, and the big screen reminded me of something. I couldn't exactly figure out what it was, but it all felt too familiar. As if I had experienced something like this before. This feeling filled me with dread. Lyra was sobbing uncontrollably in Marius's arms as he tried to calm her down. She looked so terrified, as if she had seen Satan himself. I wanted to ask her why she seemed so terrified, but I didn't because it might make her freak out more. "The servers," I said. "We finally found them." Of all the things, I remembered we were here for Lyra's servers, which her sister had stolen, and now they had been found. So this was one good thing. We could finally take them to our pack and end this whole chase. "We need to take them back," Marius said, stroking Lyra's head. I wanted to ease her too, but I was too shaken by everything. A myriad of images flashed in front of my eyes every time I blinked, and all those images contained blood and gore and other sickening things. For some reason, I saw Marius's wolf covered in blood, deeply disturbing me. I didn't know why I saw such things, but they terrified me deeply. I wondered if something in the air was making me feel these strange things, almost as if I were hallucinating. I couldn't shake off the image of Marius's wolf covered in blood, which kept flashing in front of my eyes again and again. "No," Lyra shot. "I'm not taking them back anymore." "What?" You wanted to find them so desperately. They have all your work. Why wouldn't you want to take them anymore? I asked her, puzzled, but she shook her head, blinking more tears. I reached out and touched her face. The sparks from the mating bond helped me calm down, but it wasn't enough. I couldn't see Lyra's terrified face. It was bothering me very much. I wanted to sweep her in my arms and kiss all her troubles away, but I felt too shaken. I was finding it harder to make sense of anything. I'm starting to remember something, Marius said. Your sister called us here, didn't she? We spent the whole day yesterday planning for this. Marius's words made me freeze. I closed my eyes and searched through my memories again, trying to find something that matched his words. The last thing I remembered was us driving through an abandoned port town. And then yesterday we were planning something. Maybe it was for this to come here and take the servers from Lyra's sister. But where was she? There were just too many gaps in my memory. I remembered Rickard visiting us when he learned we were in curses. I recalled feeling anxious about meeting him, and then confused and irked upon meeting him. However, I couldn't remember anything about the meeting with him. There are gaps in my memories, I told Marius, and from the deep frown on his face, I could tell it was the same for him too. He was sorting through his memories, trying to make sense of the whole situation. Meanwhile, Lyra watched us intently. The terror was still in her eyes and it put me on edge. She didn't feel safe here, which made me want to get us all out of here as soon as possible. Do you remember anything, Lyra? Marius asked. We need to get out of here, Lyra answered instead. Her widened eyes were enough to let me know that she did know something about this whole situation, but she seemed too terrorized to say anything. I exchanged a look with Marius. He'd noticed the same things as I. It made me wonder even more what happened, and how did we end up unconscious with so many gaps in our memories. But the terror in her eyes made me pull out the comms device and try to reach out to the reinforcement. We'll get out of here soon, baby girl. You don't have to worry about that, Marius assured her. I wanted to ease her too, but seeing that Marius's words didn't help her a bit made me more restless to get her out of there. This place was deeply bothering her. I'm calling in the reinforcements to get these out, I declared. You two can start the trek. No. Lyra hissed again. I said we're not taking them back. We're all leaving this place now. But why? I asked, puzzled. Marius mirrored my feelings. Even though I had trouble recalling anything correctly from the past few days, I still remembered how desperate and restless Lyra had been to find these servers because they stored essential and sensitive information. I remembered how she spent days and nights in the library with her computers, trying to find these servers, but now that they had been found, she didn't want to take them with us. It didn't make any sense to me at all. It's not worth it, she answered quietly. A dark look dawned upon her face. What does it mean? Marius asked. These are your servers, Lyra. You worked so hard for them. It's not worth it, she repeated, shaking her head. We cannot take them. Then what are we going to do with them? I asked, getting more and more puzzled as she spoke. We'll blow them up, she replied. But I'm not taking them back. They're too risky. I don't want to lose. No. I cannot do this anymore, she started sobbing again. Marius stroked her head, trying to ease her while he exchanged a look with me. Are you sure you want to blow this all up? I asked. There's so much stuff in them. I don't care about that stuff anymore, Lyra snapped. I'm telling you. It's not worth it. I have seen. No. I'm not taking them back with me. Blow this shit up and let's get out of here and pretend this ever happened, she said, sobbing. Do you remember what happened? Marius asked her cautiously. In response, she started sobbing harder. She knew. And she was fucking terrified of it. However, I was still hesitant about blowing up her servers, and I could tell Marius felt the same way. Give us one proper reason to blow up the servers, I said. I don't want you to regret this later. I'll never regret this. Trust me, she said darkly, saying that was enough. All right. Let's get out of here, Marius said. I nodded. Take her. I'll see how this could be set off, I said to him, but Lyra protested. No, I'm not leaving anyone behind. You're coming with us, she said defensively. I'm not staying back here, Lyra, I assured her, but she wasn't convinced. The remote to start the timer is somewhere here, she stated, looking around. Timer? Marius asked, looking at the screen with an odd expression. I felt that sickening déjà vu as more and more bloody images flashed in front of my eyes rapidly, making me feel dizzy. I got it, Lyra shot, holding a small remote. Give it to me, Marius said. Caspian, take her. I'll set it no, she growled. I'm not leaving either of you behind, she screamed, her voice echoing through the whole container. She seemed deeply paranoid about something. A chaos of emotions was brewing in her eyes. Lyra, it's okay. Give it to me. I will see. I know how to start the timer, she snapped. We'll have 5 minutes to get out of here and run as far away as possible, she stated. All right. You don't have to run. Marius and I will phase. You can ride either of us, I said, approaching her to take the remote from her, but she jerked away. I'm starting to timer, and we're all getting out of here now, she commanded. I exchanged a look with Marius. He nodded. All right, I said. We're leaving now, I said, and Marius shifted again. I was about to shift too, but then I noticed a look of hesitancy on her face. Was she having second doubts about this? I wondered and was about to tell her that it was okay if she didn't blow up the servers, but before I could say anything, a determined look flashed on her face, and she pressed a button on the remote. The screen lit up with numbers, and the countdown began immediately. I stood for a second and watched the countdown as more and more broken memories flashed in front of my eyes, but Marius's growl snapped me out of my thoughts. We needed to leave soon. 103. Lyra, I tried not to stare at Marius's wolf when he shifted. However, my mind already started to blast me with the images of his dead wolf. His dead eyes, reminding me of the way blood was flowing through the silver bullet wound in the middle of his head. All those images made me sick instantly. I fought the tears back and reminded myself that Marius and Caspian were alive, and in one piece now. But now their lives depended on me keeping my promise to the moon goddess. They didn't know of my bargain and they didn't need to know. I glanced at Caspian's wolf and then at the screen before climbing on Caspian's back. Marius's wolf grunted before leading the way. I checked the compass to ensure we ran in the right direction. The two didn't seem to remember what had happened in the past hour. It was a good thing for them, but I wished the moon goddess had wiped my memory too. Maybe this was her way of torturing me to keep reminding me of the deal. The two of them ran fast despite the thick snow. In my head I was counting down until the bomb would go off. It seemed to take forever, but the hot air angrily rushed past us when the explosion finally happened. Caspian's and Marius's wolves ran even faster, not stopping to look back. However, I glanced over my shoulder to see a huge fire had swallowed the containers. The scene almost blinded me. I sighed and laid my head on Caspian's wolf while he kept running. The adrenaline rushing through my veins for the past couple of hours finally wore off, and the exhaustion kicked in. But I didn't expect it to take over me so quickly. My eyelids grew heavy almost instantly, and they fluttered shut. Resting my head on Caspian's wolf's back felt good, and I sighed deeply, lulled by how Caspian's wolf was running. As soon as the exhaustion gripped me, I started feeling pain in all my muscles. I suppressed a groan and tried to sit up again, but it was already too late. I slipped into darkness soon enough and didn't remember a thing afterwards. However, as soon as I closed my eyes, I saw blood. I saw Marius's wolf covered in so much blood and not moving. I saw the same thing with Caspian's wolf. He was covered in blood and looked completely dead. Panic gripped my heart. I couldn't do much but stare at my mates covered in blood and gore. I wanted to cry but I couldn't. I wanted to touch them and check for their pulses, but it felt like my whole body was bound. The more I tried to move, the more immobile I got until it felt like my body had become a statue. My ears rang with someone's laughter. I couldn't recognize who was laughing. At first it seemed like the moon goddess was laughing at me, but then the laughter turned into my sister's. Her laughter rang louder and louder in my ear until it drove me towards the edge of insanity. I killed 2 alpha wolves. I'll have their heads on the wall of my ship's cabin. They'd look so beautiful there. Arika's words rang in my ears, terrifying me even more. I will kill you. I roared at her, but she only laughed at me. Her laughter echoed around me while I sat weeping in front of Marius's and Caspian's dead bodies. What did you do to them? I roared, but Arika didn't answer anymore. Her laughter was gone, and suddenly I was surrounded by darkness. I searched for Caspian and Marius, but their bodies had disappeared. I called out to them but didn't get any response. I kept wandering through the darkness, calling for them, but no one answered. I collapsed on my knees sobbing, clutching my hair painfully. I've lost everything now. The realization hit me out of nowhere and I sat up. You didn't keep your word this time, so I took them. The moon goddess's voice boomed through the darkness. You'll never see them again. You didn't deserve them either way, please. No, I tried. Please, I was begging, but no response came again. Instead, the darkness seemed to be closing up on me, making me feel claustrophobic. I heard a strange rattling noise behind me, and when I turned to look at it, I saw massive jaws lined with rows and rows of teeth closing on me. I screamed as it closed its teeth around me and swallowed me. I snapped my eyes open and sat up, drenched in cold sweat. I looked around frantically to see where I was. I saw the familiar wallpaper of my room in the brother's house. I was in bed, and every part of my body ached for some reason. My mouth was dry, and I reached for the jug on the bedside table, but it was empty. I tried to get off the bed, but suddenly my legs weren't working anymore. I tried to make a sound, but my mouth was so dry that it hurt to move it, and no sound came out. My heart was still ramming in my chest painfully, and my stomach twisted in my abdomen, making me gag, but nothing came out. I tried to remember what had happened. I remembered an explosion and then passing out. My brain refused to give me any other memory after that. Caspian, I called. Or tried to call, but my voice was too hoarse. Marius, I broke off into a coughing fit before a wave of pain washed over my body, making me whimper. Felt like I was being burnt alive. I tried to call them, but nothing came from my lips. I collapsed back on the bed, finding it hard to breathe. It felt like someone was sitting on my chest. My lungs refused to accommodate more air. More and more cold sweat broke all over my forehead. The door flew open when it felt like I would pass out, and Marius rushed in. Seeing him alive gave me a huge relief, but an intense wave of pain washed over me. His eyes widened as soon as he looked at my face. Suddenly he was screaming, and it took me a moment to realize that he was yelling for Caspian to call someone from the Pack hospital, but that was not what I needed. I needed him. I needed Caspian. I needed the two of them together. Baby girl, are you all right? Marius asked, getting on my side. Panic was written all over this face. I grabbed him as soon as he was near, and instantly it eased me, but a stronger wave of pain washed over me, making me want to climb him like a tree. Our eyes widened with realization. You're in heat, baby girl, Marius said darkly. The video is about to end, but the adventure never stops. Don't forget to subscribe and continue this journey with us.